Serious, what's the scariest experience you have been through? Attention! Serious tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns. The first time I had a gallbladder attack, I legit thought I was dying. The pain is completely out of this world. It's hard to really describe. The pain is unfathomable and feels incredibly dangerous, especially when you have no idea what is happening and the panic that goes with it. I thought I was having a heart attack, or worse, that my body was straight up dying. It sounds like hyperbole, but it honestly isn't. Worst experience of my entire life. I suffered through gallbladder attacks for over 2 years because I was a skinny guy in my early 20s, and didn't fit the stereotype of the typical patient. Finally, someone decided to do an ultrasound. I've never been more happy to finally hear a diagnosis, because the asshole doctors told me for years it was all in my head. My boss dropped dead on the dance floor at the company Christmas party. Edit. Wow, this blew up. To those asking how he died, I think he was a diabetic and had a few too many that night. Led to a heart attack somehow. This was 20 years ago, so don't remember all the details. He was a good guy. In his 50s, divorced, loved high-quality vodka. I was a bartender and he was the restaurant manager. It was definitely a bummer. He was a good buffer between the employees and the coke addict that owned the restaurant. Something similar happened to my brother-in-law. He would normally work out before he went to bed every night. One night he went to bed but got up a few minutes later to get some water and just collapsed right there next to my sister. He was dead instantly. They did an autopsy and have no idea what caused it, but it was probably related to his workout that night. His heart just stopped. It's insane how something like that can happen so quickly to the healthiest people. Wow, yeah, similar thing happened to me as a young person. On a Duke of Edinburgh camp, snorkeling in a reef. Went through a reef cave thing and got disoriented and stuck. Panicked, found a very small hole in the roof of the cave and crammed myself through it, cutting the shit out of my flanks. I was half convulsing and seeing the gray blur closing in on the edges of my vision as I surfaced. That was over 20 years ago and I still remember everything about the experience. I did this while freediving in a spring in Central FL. Like 16 feet from the surface, I got stuck on a rock, and had to fight my way out of my own pants. Lost my sight near the surface, then had to recoup immediately to go get my pants. It felt like I was stuck for minutes, but it must have only been seconds since I was so close to my breath-holding limit. On my first ever resort dive, the mask hurt and I tried to loosen it. It filled with water, I screamed and dropped my regulator, couldn't breathe, obviously, or see, and also passed out while panicking. The guide took me to the surface as soon as they noticed, which was quickly, to their credit, and it was absolutely awful. My biggest fear happened to me like 15 years ago. Woke up in a hospital with fours in me and a feeding tube going down my nose. Family all terrified around me. Then I passed out. https://www.reddit.com/r/insphaelitis/comments/kht319/my_story/question_medium=source=share. LOL, I'd recommend not getting meningitis and encephalitis. Over 2 months in the ICU, a month in the hospital, then a month and a half in a rehab center. Miraculously I left there walking, talking, and able to take care of myself. Shit was crazy. Same. Scariest moment for me was waking up on a ventilator with no memory of how I got there. 45 miles per hour truck on a back road. I was about 4 feet from having been thrown into a telephone pole. That was 17 years ago. It was my brain and spleen for me. But lately the bone pain is back in full force. Finding my dad dead after he killed himself. His room had never been so quiet and still. I stepped in and saw him face down, blue, with his urine all over the floor where he'd peed himself after he passed. I was in complete shock and I'll never forget touching him to try to wake him up and the feeling of recognition finally setting in. Even though I'd known as soon as I stepped in the room that he was dead, my mind refused to let me accept it was true until I felt him and tried to shake him awake. Feeling his stillness was the most terrifying moment of my life and I don't remember much after that. It clicks in your head that this person is gone. They are never coming back. And then the guilt and pain come rushing in. The days leading up to his suicide were filled with fear and anxiety, because I knew deep down that it was coming one day and there was nothing I could do to stop it. That feeling of hopelessness is hard to put into words. Edit. Second scariest experience of my life was the time my dad tried to kill himself by stabbing himself in the head, overdosing, and tying a gun to his hand before firing twice. SWAT ended up coming to stop him, and the bullets shot out the window and missed by centimeters. I'll never forget falling to my knees outside and covering my ears because I was terrified of hearing him die. I heard the gunshots anyway, and thought he was dead. I ended up having to clean up all of the blood left behind. I was terrified of him being mad at me for putting him in a psychiatric hospital. At that point, he'd made comments about killing all of us and then himself a few months prior, so that night I genuinely thought I was going to die. My first witnessed death as a new EMT patient collapsed Christmas afternoon and we were unable to bring her back from cardiac arrest. I was the last responder to leave the room, so it was just the husband, deceased, and myself. The stillness and quietness of the room is something I have never forgotten. I've seen it many times since, but that first time really hit hard. As I grabbed our last bag, I saw the husband looking off, so I looked where he was. There was a brand new red KitchenAid mixer on the table and I looked back at the husband. He points to the mixer and says she's wanted one of those for 15 years and now she will never use it. He broke down crying and I left as quick as I could. Still can't look at a red mixer without seeing the husband sitting on the couch. It was almost 10 years ago, but I still remember what he was wearing and the way he was sitting on the couch with his outstretched finger. I'm so sorry. Those words probably feel pretty empty and repetitive now, but fuck. I have a 1-year-old kid, and this just hit a lot harder than it would have if I didn't have one. I can't imagine the torture your dad must have been in to get there. I can't imagine what you've gone through dealing with this. I can't imagine doing that to my son, but also what it would take to get me there. The surrealness in your post is brave and honest, and I just want you to know that you're an awesome human being to have your shit together and share with us. Thank you. If you ever wanna talk, drop me a line. Take care. When I was 10 years old, I was abducted while my family and I were camping at a state lake. My parents had to run some errands, so all us kids were left with one of our aunts. I went to a creek next to where our camper was to go fishing, probably about 75 yards or so. I had forgot my bait and didn't want to go back for it. Lucky for me, a man was there, so I asked him for some worms. Said they were in his car just around the corner. He guided me there, and that's when it happened. I was gagged and taken to a different part of the park grounds. What happened next, as one could imagine, are the things my nightmares were made of for countless years to come. I'm 33 now and still recall with vivid details the things that were done. Thankfully I was found within about 2 hours of my abduction. Unlucky for him, it was my father who found us first. The man somehow managed to escape my father's wrath and flee. He was apprehended by state troopers and local PD about 30 minutes later. Cue all the legal shenanigans, and sentencing. Dude was a repeat offender and still only received like 12 years prison. My family kept tabs on him while he was in custody and were notified of his release. The second scariest thing was the day he was released. My heart dropped. He's long been a fragment of past and I learned to not live in fear over that any longer. I appreciate any/all of you that may read this, or if you need someone to talk to, then my DMs are always open. Edit. I appreciate all the people that have reached out and offered support. I was lucky to have an amazing support group in my immediate family and several counselors/therapists. My life was a little messed up, had behaviors problems and whatnot, but that was expected. Again, I really appreciate your guys' concerns and comment, but after 22 years I can confidently say that I am not scared of that person/situation any longer. Despite having no history of epilepsy or related issues, I had a series of seizures at work back in 2018. It started with the simple walk into a room and forget why at the time, except I completely forgot the few seconds it took me to walk there. Then it escalated and I could feel something coming on. I didn't have convulsions, but my body couldn't respond to anything. I was just stuck, staring straight ahead, unable to speak or move. I didn't know what was wrong with me. EEG and vitamin deficiency tests all came back okay in the hospital, so it was written off as stress. I'm constantly worried about it happening again due to the nature of my work. My cousin had these. Turned out he had a small tumor on his brain. They were miraculously able to remove it and he finally has no seizures anymore. He would just stop and close his eyes when they happened. He said they were worst when it was noisy. His brain couldn't process the sounds properly when he was in a seizure and everything just was very loud and unsettling until the seizure ended. Have you ever had a neurologist check you for temporal lobe epilepsy / complex partial seizures specifically? Those are what I have, and they're exactly as you described, right down to a T. Mine are usually triggered by lack of sleep, which is why they'll usually sleep deprive you before a test to catch them, bright light / light sensitivity, severe stress, etc. A lot of EEGs can come back normal or have trouble catching them, so it's usually recommended to have a longer EEG / study done if you haven't already. Also, a normal EEG is common during simple partial seizures and does not exclude the diagnosis even if a longer EEG doesn't pick them up. The shit part about partial seizures is that you can have them without realizing or having that stuck feeling. Some people have what's called simple partial seizures instead of complex partial seizures, which don't alter awareness. My grandma, for example, has had them her whole life without realizing and just thought her memory was bad. She got diagnosed when she started having more memory issues and they finally did a proper EEG. Either way, I'm sorry you had to experience something so scary. I know firsthand just how much that fear / anxiety sucks ass. I really wish you the best and hope you look into seeing a neurologist if you haven't already. Hospitals are only for treating emergencies, and are often. Me, 7 at the time, my cousin, 4 at the time, and my dad went to the beach and my cousin tripped and hurt herself pretty badly, so my dad had to run back to the house with her to access the first aid kit. I didn't want to run, so I walked home. It was only about a 5-minute walk anyway. On the way home I passed this man's house, who I want to say was 40-ish, and he started catcalling me. I didn't really know what that was, so I just stared at him and kept walking. He didn't like that I didn't respond, I guess, and he started chasing me. My grandpa saw and started yelling at the man and the guy ran off. If I wasn't in eye view of the house, who knows what would have happened to me. Edit. Clarification. English isn't my first language, so bear with me. Something kinda similar happened to my sisters. They were coming home from school. It was a 15-minute walk through some isolated area. A man starts chasing them and starts calling out to them. They start running and turn a corner, and 3 lost gentlemen trying to find their way to a hospital nearby ask them for directions. My sisters tell them what's going on and they're saved. My older sister didn't eat much the following week. Girl I knew passed out in front of me on the beach after becoming yellow, and saw it after she passed out, with a bloody hand. Screamed help in 5 different languages. So many people were close, 20 to 30 ppl closer than 50 meters, to me, and yet no one came. They did not even turn around to check what was happening. I still have nightmares to this day. It was short-lived, but I thought my toddler was with his father. His father thought he was with me. I was in a room feeding the baby. We were at a relative's property, a property with a murky water dam on it. Never felt such deep dread in my entire life. Turned out he had spotted a small horse in the meadows, and that's where I found him, near a fence watching the horse. That's sort of how my dad passed when I was around 10. My dad just had some teeth stuff done and was prescribed some painkillers. I grew up with my mom and dad being separated, so I had 2 households. I was told that he thought he had me for the night. I was with mom, and he couldn't find me, and he went searching for me. He ended up trying to scale a fence and fell and broke some of his vertebrae, which caused him to become a quadriplegic. He survived 2 years in hospital. Every time I think about it, I can't imagine how scared he was trying to find me. Sad face.